6 facets of understanding and how they give us language and specific goals around which we can build meaningful, affective, behavioral, and cognitive learning. Yes, I would argue that the 6 facets of understanding are more than just semantics. Each one is a distinctive way of thinking about a concept, skill, or ability in a way that offers a different ownership, ability to apply, however you want to think about it. Why is this important to deconstruct? Because as educators and administrators, the more we understand exactly what it is we need our students to do, to understand, to think about, to be able to show others, to prove that indeed they have acquired the desired learning, the more we can target that and be specific with our language and what it is we need to see, the more we're able to A, assess appropriately, and B, ensure that that learning has indeed taken place. Now, I do want to point out here, I don't talk a lot about direct instruction. I don't do that because A, I am a strong social constructivist, but B, because that's kind of a given. And perhaps this is my own professional blind spot that I haven't mentioned this earlier. Direct instruction is most commonly used today in our classrooms. I don't need to teach you that. You all already know it. You've all experienced it many, many times. I recognize that when you leave this class, you're going to be back out in an environment where direct instruction is what everybody's doing. I am trying to ensure that your comfortability with designing in a constructivist fashion is strong enough that you will stick with it when you are out there on your own. So again, don't misunderstand me. Just like Jell-O, there's always room for direct instruction. But that cannot and should not be your one and only tried and true way of delivering curriculum to your students. So, a person who understands, here's our 6 facets, and we move on. Facet 1, explanation. Think about the kinds of assignments and assessments that enable students to be able to give you their explanation. Fill in the blank, no. Short answer, yes. Support what you're thinking. Justify why X plus Y equals this. Generalize. Predict. Well, I think the next time this happens, this will happen again because when we did it in class, this is what happened. Verify, prove, substantiate. Show the relationships. Recognize again, nothing happens in a vacuum. So if we understand that, even the most isolated, insular concept can, in one way or another, be related to something else. And it's through those relationships that we form strong explanations and strengthen our schema of a concept. Interpretation. What does this mean? And what does it matter? Why does it matter? What of it? How does it relate to me? Rashomon. If you've never rented this movie and you're into anything classic, I highly recommend you do. It is the brilliant story. It's an old Kurosawa film. And it's the story of a Japanese man and woman traveling, and they are accosted by a thief. And we see the story from all 3 perspectives. And we recognize, even though each person is experiencing the same thing, they are interpreting it very differently. We are talking about bringing text to life, taking static, flat, one-dimensional ideas and looking at them through a personal lens in a fashion that we somehow recognize, oh, you know, in my world, I could consider that as blubbity blub. Ich bin ein Berliner. If you do not recognize this quote, and even if you do, I strongly suggest you go to YouTube and you put in Eddie Izzard and Berliner, and you will have the funniest 3.5 minutes, possibly of your life, where he describes why this particular quote was interpreted one way, despite the fact that it actually meant something completely different. Facet 3, application. How can we use this thing, idea, concept, bit of knowledge? How should I apply, modify my thinking, my acting, my doing, my choosing to best meet the needs of the situation? The Food Network is all about facet 3, right? It's all about applying divergent concepts and skills and bits of knowledge in unique ways to create either something that solves a problem or opens completely new possibilities. Perspective, point of view. Something is justified. The situation, the plausibility of it, the limitations of it. You need a critical eye to be able to think along the lines of this facet, to have authentic perspective. Miles Horton, The Long Haul, anyone who reads this gentleman, he is the king of perspective. I respect him on a level that is beyond measure. Here's a gentleman who grew up in an environment where real education was completely undervalued because it didn't support the lifestyle of the people around him. Yet he went out and created schools, and I'm not going to ruin it for you. Go Google Miles Horton. Learn a little bit more about this amazing gentleman. And let's go back to the Danish cartoon. Remember this from a couple years ago? There was a drawing that was posted in a newspaper. It was a cartoon, a political cartoon, of the Prophet Muhammad, and underneath his, I believe it was a turban, which is wrong anyway, but underneath whatever hat he was wearing at the time, there were bombs. Now, to some, this was satire on the situation at the time where there was jihad and people were trying to blow up all kinds of commercial airliners. To others, their perspective was this was heresy. This was so unforgivably awful that the artist and the people who ran the newspaper, there were death threats and they had to be under 24-hour watch. Perspective is truth. We may like to think the truth is objective, but the reality from a human perspective is, not to be redundant, but it's not. So, perspective is huge. Empathy. What does this person see in that story that I don't? What do I need to experience to understand why someone else prefers using one algorithm for solving a problem and I another? How can I relate to the people involved and the people who might be working on this problem or using this text to try and understand something? This is key with the affective domain. It offers a completely different way of thinking and seeing and understanding and insight than does the behavioral or the cognitive. And paperclips. I believe at this point it's probably been mentioned 2 or 3 different times. Facet 6, self-knowledge. All right, let's talk about our ABC domains. Nurture, nature, and blank. Level of self-awareness. Your self-consciousness. Again, nothing occurs in a vacuum. No one lives in a vacuum. We are influenced by our surroundings on a level that most of us never recognize. You know, the old joke, does a fish know it's in water? The water's just there. It never has to think about it. It's the same thing with the environments in which we grow up in. Do we recognize the role they play in shaping the way we look at the world? The reason why we do certain things or think the way we do or have stereotypes of other people. How does who I am shape my views? What are the limits to my understanding at this moment? What am I prone to misunderstanding because of my life and my experiences and my beliefs and those of the people around me? How would I have handled XYZ? Self-knowledge is key to authentic transformation.